Hey everybody, KC here. So today is a big day. Today is the 1 year, I'm going to call it an observance as opposed to a celebration or anniversary. It's a 1 year observance of when we all started really taking the pandemic seriously. Because it's 1 year ago today that the NBA shut down. And at that point, people started saying, whoa, there's something happening here. We may have to take this seriously. And if that didn't get your attention, it's 1 year ago today that Tom Hanks announced that he'd come down with COVID-19 down in Australia. And if Tom Hanks could get it, anybody could get it. So we all started paying attention, wearing masks, physical distancing, washing of hands, all those things that have defined our lives for the past year. And the thing is, that's all about looking back. Today's also a good day to start looking forward because, as I keep saying, hey, maybe the light at the end of the tunnel is not an oncoming train. People are being vaccinated at faster rates than I think anybody expected. Between 2 and 3 million vaccinations a day in this country. And there's more and more supply of vaccine to be made available to people. So even the people who either live in a place where they have not been able to access it yet or are too young to access it, it looks fairly sure that in a relatively short period of time, as long as we can keep our eye on the ball, they can get vaccinated, and maybe we're actually going to find our way out of this thing for the most part by the midsummer, maybe end of summer. And that is all fabulous. I do think some people are a little premature, referring to it as the next roaring 20s. Well, we'll see, right? Again, we got to keep our eye on the ball. And let's not forget the roaring 20s were followed by the Great Depression. But there was a really interesting piece in the Washington Post this week by a doctor named Lucy McBride. And she was writing about COVID, but what she was talking about is the fact that we're all going to have to get used to the idea after we stop living with COVID, we're going to have to start understanding the idea that we're living with trauma. And one of the things she writes is, month after month, we've been yearning to be done with enforced distancing and social isolation and life in a more virtual reality. Now that the moment has arrived, as millions of Americans have been vaccinated and millions more will soon roll up their sleeves for it, the prospect is oddly disconcerting. Trauma has a way of doing that to us. We've lost more than 500,000 lives in this country alone. We've suffered unprecedented economic, social, and emotional upheaval. And regardless of our individual pandemic experience, each of us has faced some level of loss, grief, and despair. And listen, I think that that's an important thing for people, especially in the retail business, to think about, because they're going to be dealing with people who have been traumatized in their customer base as well as in their employee base. And we don't know how that's going to manifest itself. We don't know what nerves are raw. We don't know how people are sort of going to move forward out of this. But it's important to remember, I think, that we are moving forward. We're not moving backward into what used to be. We're moving forward into someplace else, something else. And leaders, I think, and I don't care if you're a CEO, a store manager, or a department manager, I think their senses have to be attuned to the idea that there are going to be shifts in behavior. There are going to be shifts in attitude. And they have to pay attention. And they have to listen. And they have to be willing to engage customers and employees, understanding that even when COVID ends, we're going to be dealing with the results of COVID for a long period of time. Anyway, I'm still hopeful. I still think I'd rather be at this position right now than where we were 6 months ago. I'm just hoping at one point, in the not too distant future, I'm going to start doing these FaceTime with the content guys things from the road instead of from, my office. Anyway, that's what's on my mind this morning. And as always, I want to hear what's on your mind.